Okay, I'm going to address these limes one more time. I was going to show you something else, but I found my little applicator and I felt really bad that I didn't show it to you properly. So I just wanted to show you how this works. So these usually come like these little, like they look like little eyeshadow applicators. And then you just pop a little bit of color onto it that way. And you can put it right directly onto your sketch. And they're nice. They're not going to smear nearly as much as a regular pastel will, but they will smear. They will pick up on the other side of your page when you close your book. So the way to get around that is just like by putting a piece of glassine over it. That will keep the page protected if you want to. So these are nice because you can blend, you can add, color on top of color. So similar to using with the regular stick pastels, you can play with it in lots of different ways. Put one more color on there just for fun. Let's see what happens if we get a purple shadow going, because that's kind of a neat contrast to it. Anyway, you get the idea. So it's another whole look. Again, you're going to just want to, these are all, well, those are the same, but anyway, they're very, very different. And there's a lot of other ways to do. These are just so quick and everything. You could certainly layer a lot more color on. Actually, why don't we try colored pencils are definitely good for building up color. And a lot of times I know I have gotten patient with it. What if I'm just doing, so I'm going to throw an apricot in the mix. If I'm just drawing an apricot, for example, it's going to take a lot to get the colors that I want. And I have to really be super patient about the buildup of colors with a colored pencil. And it's not like it has to be perfect. It depends on the scope of your sketch. What are you really trying to achieve? It's nice though, like, again, just like when you were drawing with regular pencils, to kind of go and feel the contour of that piece of fruit, if that's what you're drawing, or whatever it is that you're drawing, to go around, kind of like cross contour lines on it. You feel the shape of it. And that kind of comes out in the drawing, the more you layer on pigment. You don't always see those marks, but I feel like it just kind of can still come across that way. And it gives you a really good representation or feeling of what it is. But see how you can still see a lot of white through there. It's going to take some more layering. And since it's an apricot, I want to go with some different colors in it too, some pinks and reds and layering. You don't have to really push hard. It's really more of a, because that's going to carve into your, depending on how thick your paper is too, but that kind of puts lines into it that you don't necessarily want. So it's just really being patient and going, scumbling if you're scumbling, or cross-hatching if you're cross-hatching, contour lines, whatever it is, you just kind of keep going at it, keep adding more. If we wanted a little bit of yellow in there, you can add more color, you can layer on top of that color if you think, oh, that's not quite the color I wanted, but actually I'm kind of liking it. I'm going to want to get some red in there, and so maybe coming down value and hue, very similar. So when color can get, the value can get really complicated with color. So a lot of times when I'm drawing or sketching, if it's feeling wrong, I'll take a picture of it, turn it to a black and white. I'll do that in class. I'll show you what that looks like. But you can do that and just see if your values are right. Is the form starting to turn? My light is coming here. All of this part below this line, right, is going to be going into shadow. So just like what we learned with our regular values, drawing with a pencil or with a pen, all this part down here is going to be a darker value than what's up here. Right now, this is a little bit darker, but not dark enough, not nearly dark enough to turn the form. And color can really throw you off on that. So it's good just to sort of practice looking at, if you're drawing from life, notice what is that apricot doing that's sitting right there on the counter and tempting you to eat it. Instead, look and see, well, okay, what's going to make that turn? So going a little darker in that, maybe even getting some even darker still down where it's going to sit at the table. And all of a sudden that fruit is turning. Now, maybe you didn't want it quite as purple, but you can layer over that purple. Now you've got that same apricot color, but a darker value of it. And you're adding just to another layer. And this is what, I mean, a lot of people give up on colored pencils because it is actually, you have to have, you know, the stamina for it, because honestly, they're a time consuming way to sketch, but they're beautiful if you're willing to work at it. And oftentimes I'm just not. So, but I like them. I really do. I used to work with them a lot. But then, you know, if you have any trouble with hands cramping up and things like that, this will do it for you, because you do have to keep layering and layering and trying things. And it's like, you just kind of want it to be done. But if you have no problem with hands cramping, or you're just willing to really take your time with something, it's a nice way just to spend an afternoon sitting with a piece of fruit and trying to notice all the different things, you know, the little lines, the little bits of color, the way to turn the form, layering more. And then what would a cool background be if you were going to put a background in? Just, it's fun to just try different colors and see, get a dark, and sometimes that dark background is really going to make that light pop, isn't it? And then it starts coming out. And maybe it's sitting on a table, just doing this little mini sketch. It's sitting on a table. Then I can even have a different color down below. And this is where a lot of people, like, you know, I get questions a lot. So what color should the table be? And it's like, I don't know. You have to try different things. But one way to try is by looking at your color wheel and saying, okay, well, what would be another one to add to this? Because every time you're adding a color, you're, you know, it's something more to complicate it or to enhance it. So you kind of have to just start, you know, trying things or seeing it or looking on the color wheel to see what will make sense. Because we've got, you know, now the blue and the orange, what would be good for that? I'm thinking maybe, you know, maybe a bright green, maybe for a table. Could be. Could try it. But sometimes the answer isn't just in looking at the color wheel. Maybe you want all colors next to each other, analogous. Maybe you want opposites, complementary colors, or the opposite on the color wheel, and that works a lot, or a split complementary. So I'll show you what that looks like. But see how this is just kind of changing it all. Now I still need a shadow for that to really be grounded. So maybe I'll pull some of that blue back in. I like these little tiny sketches because you can really sample out and, you know, flesh things out before you've committed to a big sketch in your sketchbook or whatever. It's fun just to try different ways and see what all your options are. If you look at, we'll try to put it in your, I will put it in your unit. Joseph Albers did all of those color combination studies. And so they're really fascinating to look at how he studied color and how one color is going to look different. Same color is going to look different with a different background. So it's kind of an interesting thing to just play with a piece of fruit and try different backgrounds with it, try different, you know, and see how different that apricot or orange will look if this was a purple background or pink, or if it was, you know, something else. So it's just another thing to play with, another thing to think about. There's just so much in sketching. Let me share my screen and I'll just give you a glance at a color wheel really quickly. That will help you to see some of these things I'm talking about too. So color wheel is basically this. This is one, I think I've got more up here, but I will include this so you will have it in with your, that you can refer to. This is all about, this whole article, it's great. Actually, we'll start up on this one. It's all about color. And so if you are not a painter, this is all new to you, this is a great article to read to give you some insight on it. But you've got your primary colors are colors that cannot be mixed to get, they already exist. So we've got red, yellow, and blue. And then the secondaries will, what happens when you mix the red and the blue together, you get purple, and the red and the yellow together, you get orange, and the yellow and the blue, you get green. And then the tertiaries are the ones in between. So there's a way of looking at the color this way or the color as a spectrum. That's what this article addresses as well. And it's super fascinating the way they handle this. But just for the purpose of quick sketching and adding a little bit of color, just to refer sometimes, especially when you're blocked and you don't know what color to add. If you've got this sort of orangey thing going on, go opposite on the color wheel. Oh, what would a green blue look next to it? That would have been a good choice, right? A split complementary would be if I had this, you know, I'm doing an orange, I would want the same, like, so skipping 3 and going to the 4th, skipping 3 and going to the 4th. So I'd have this, the orangey, red orange is my apricot, for example, if it was, and then I could go to the green yellow and the blue, the blue purple or whatever. So it's getting that equidistance between whatever your color is. So instead of just the opposite going to this blue, I can go to, or I can even, by that matter, I can go to this green and this blue, or I could skip out one more and go to this yellow green and go to the blue or purple blue. So there's these kind of color schemes that people play with. And you can also go say, hey, what's it going to look like? I've got an apricot in this color. What if it was red and purple? You know, I kept it analogous, things that are touching on that color wheel. So that's a way to go too. So sometimes this will give you just some really good ideas if you're stuck. Just look at a color wheel and maybe you would do a pastel of one of these instead of as intense, or maybe, you know, the object itself is lighter, not as, and you want to go with something darker to really make it pop. So that's an option too. So anyway, I'll include this. This is really useful. It's by Greenleaf and Blueberry. It's a really useful article on understanding color, especially color as a color spectrum. And when we talk about warm and cool colors, it's super difficult for a lot of people to understand that. What do you mean by a warm blue? What do you mean by it? You know, and so this article, I think, explains it better than anyone I've ever read before. So, so I will throw that in there for you, and hopefully you will you'll like it. And that is that for now. So for a little bit more, like what if you were out and you were you grab these sketches in either pen or pencil and you come back and now you want to add the color to it. So I just wanted to show you again, just kind of more of the same, but you're out on the beach and you grabbed a few things and they're fine. I mean, these are thumbnail quick sketches I did in a minute, but say your sketch is fine, but it's not like super captivating. And I decided I want to go back in and just like add a pop of color. And you can like do as much or as little as you want. Sometimes just adding, you know, maybe just your sky and keeping it like really simple, but just adding a little bit of blue sky all of a sudden changes that, doesn't it? And you might decide to go in and ink or color in the whole thing, which you can, or you could just leave it at that just to differentiate, just to add a little pop into your drawing. And if, you know, if it's a building, it's the side of a building or a tree and you just have the tree color, it's whatever. Maybe I just did the umbrella. So let's add that just for fun too and see. So I can just go right over. Oops, except I bled into there. Another thing with watercolor, you got to wait for things to dry and be patient. Otherwise, watercolor travels. So if you're not familiar with it, just know that it does that, but also know that you can just also pop it up and pick it up right away, either with a paper towel or with another dry brush or anything. But see, just having a little bit of that is enough to just like, okay, now my sketch is kind of popping. It's looking a lot better. It doesn't have to be all the way filled in. I can. We'll let that dry, and I'll show you this other umbrella on this side. This one I did with the water-soluble pencil, graphite pencil. And so it's kind of interesting because I can, you know, manipulate it. If I, you know, don't quite have the drawing like I wanted, or if I want to use some of that as in order to add value, I can go back in and add more line work on top of it. I had it right here, which I do. Okay, so like say I wanted to have those ribs of the umbrella coming out. maybe some more definition, something like that. I can do that and add to it. I can pick up color that I added on there. I can move that around if that's like, oh, that's like way darker than what I wanted. I can use that and blend it in and get some value added to it that way. Let's get that pole going. So now I've got a sketch that's really showing this a lot better. Get the shadow underneath the umbrella. Possibly just have the whole inked in. I could color in the whole thing. I can leave it at that and say, okay, now we get more of an idea. We get more of a sense of what we're looking at. It's added to, it's giving my sketch a pop of color. Maybe you've got, you know, a bigger sketch going on with a lot of things and you just want to do the umbrella because that's going to stand out and look neat. That is good to do. Now, if you wanted to decide and say, okay, well, I also want to go in and get the color. And again, don't get too close, wait for it to dry. I'm very impatient, as you can tell. Let's just make this thing. But you can go in and add more color to your sketch that way. If I don't go all the way up to it, it won't bleed, but I am because I want more color. Again, I can always just boop, 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 pop some up and you kind of have some nice variation going. I can get some sand color in, sky color. I'll let that dry for a minute. We'll come over and do this one. Having lots of different areas to work on. Whenever I'm doing watercolor, I like to just have a lot of different areas because I know how impatient I am. So I can work one area of a sketch, let it dry, work the other area of a sketch. These are nice and easy to do right on the spot, to bring it with you to the beach with a water pen and do this, or bring it home and adding. I'm going to show you adding wet into wet, which is a watercolor technique. It's going to travel up in there a little bit. So you see it sort of blurring and playing, you know, moving around the paper on its own because water does that. Bring it down to the beach. I can blot up areas. I can go down and layer more color. It's just kind of nice keeping it really super simple and not a lot of detail. I'm going to add that sandy color. But I like the pen lines showing through. So it's nice if you have a pen that's not water soluble that you can add color over the top. It's going to really kind of add something to your sketches. That's one of the things you're looking for. We'll come down and do, well, let's see. Let me add a little sand here. I think it's drying enough. We'll see. And so I can even go that if I'm just keeping just a block of color and not, doing too much, I can add texture to it by wadding up a napkin and dot, 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 get a little texture going, keeping that shadow. Anyway, there's lots you can do. Maybe I'm going to pull some of that yellow back up into the umbrella just to have it just be a 2-color thing, not a whole lot of color going on that way, but it's a pop of color. So sometimes just having 1 or 2 colors in your sketch is definitely a fun thing to try. So same thing on these rocks. It's like by themselves, they're fine. There's nothing, super spectacular about them, but they're the rocks I saw. So let me go in. This one is the graphite, water soluble graphite. So I'm going to be able to get, a little bit more definition. I can move things around. I can get some highlights on top of that. Maybe go with some yellow where the sun's hitting. Let's see. So I've got the rocks in the water there. I can go do the same on here. So maybe I'm gonna have light at the top. Maybe even purple or something as it comes down. I could try that, see how that looks with the black ink. Things look different over ink a lot of times, different than what you expect. You never know. So yeah, sometimes that adds, I kind of like how that's going there. I'll do a little on that side too. Or you just leave the black of the pen. Either way is just fine. This one, you have options. Play with what you have. You can even mix it up if you didn't want to, if you're really wanting to just explore and just try different things. And maybe you have, a little bit of watercolor or the water soluble pencils. Again, you can go in on that and add your sky that way. You can keep it dry, or you can go ahead and add the water. Sometimes I'll have these out and maybe I don't forgot my brush or didn't, oops, want to do that yet. That's good to do. I can just, you know, add my colors while I'm there. And if I decide when I get home, I want to go over it with a brush and some water, I have that option. So brush, I go in and activate that. And all of a sudden my sketch is taking on a little different appearance. And you can be super loose with it. It doesn't have to cover every speck, right? You can kind of keep those little whites here and there and be really loose and fun with it. Maybe I'll pull a little bit of that color back into the shallow, oops, shallow end of the water. And maybe I would just leave it at that, or I don't, or I go back in and have like the dark blue of the ocean or whatever it is that day as it recedes. And maybe I just keep some pencil sketch too of it. You don't have to ink in or activate all of it if you want to keep like a combination. That's a possibility too. So there's like endless possibilities with this. It's just fun to play and see and, you know, be loose. I like the looseness of this. I like keeping a lot of white sometimes, you know, especially in sketchbooks. I think this is kind of a fun look. But you're going to have your own style and what you're attracted to too. So there's no rights or wrongs in this. Do what you love. Notice what other people are doing, maybe some of the ones that we've looked at, and see what it is that, you know, what do you like? I don't know. It's like, I'm feeling like that if I put a blue sky, yeah, I can leave it white for sure. But if I put a blue sky, I don't know, I could put an orange sky or a red sky even, just go totally like, what would that do? Take a bold leap and try something, because you never know. Certainly different. So this is just to remind you, have some fun, have a good time with this. There's no rights or wrongs. You don't have to match colors exactly like you see, but if that's your goal and that's something you're wanting to do in your sketch, then that's another thing. And we will be getting into that as we move into other genres and things that we are painting landscapes or we're painting portraits, and I'll show you other ways to blend and try. But I think for the purpose of sketching, just, you know, going for something like that, it's like, it's a great, you know, it's a pop of color and it really makes your sketchbook look kind of exciting and fun. All right, so have a good time. Don't forget about that part. Have fun. Do what you want to do. See you guys.